Let's bring in Drew Sarachman, my good man, the football expert, the guru, who'll be joining us all high school football season long here on AM 1310 WDPN. And maybe we'll get him to join us a couple of times on our Football Friday shows brought to you by AWP Safety. We'll have to work on that a little bit. Drew, good afternoon, pal. How you doing this afternoon?
Good, Sammy. How are you? Sorry for the technical difficulties. Work Wi-Fi and work computer, so trying to navigate through that.
You have work Wi-Fi problems too?
Yeah, I don't know. We got to get the IT team. Our IT team's great, but it was probably user error on my part.
We have issues like that here all the time. All right. So first of all, you look like I'm on a little video delay with you, so you're coming in for me about 15 seconds. You look like you're ready to coach.
Always.
You don't even have a hat or a whistle on today. You look like you're ready to coach.
Yeah, I hung up the whistle a couple years ago, and then Coach Renzi Parnell asked me to give him to come coach with him last year at McKinley. So I told him I'd give him 1 year, and I did that, and it was fun. But AWP needs me, and my wife needs me too on the weekend. So that's where we landed. Happy wife, happy life, right?
That's what they say. You got it. So let's kind of introduce you to our listeners and viewers and watchers. Some of them may not be familiar with you and your coaching history and your stops along the way. You've been a part of a couple of really great programs. Kind of let the folks know what you are all about and maybe how you even got involved in coaching and the stops you've made and the success that you've had with staff and other coaches and things like that.
Yeah. So I graduated from St. Thomas Aquinas in 2005, where current Archbishop Hoban coach Tim Terrell was the coach at the time there. From there, I went to Youngstown State, was an undergraduate assistant. After I finished up at Youngstown State, I joined Tim Terrell's staff at St. Thomas for a couple years till he went to Florida and was coaching at Chaminade Madonna. Then I moved on. I was coached at Boardman for a couple years when they're in the Federal League, East Palestine down there. I was the offensive coordinator. Then spent a couple years out in California at Huntington Beach High School. Was able to be part of a CIF championship team. That was awesome. And then when Tim Terrell got the job at Hoban, I was lucky enough to join his staff as the offensive coordinator there. Was the offensive coordinator there for 4 years. The first was part of the first two state championship teams. So that was really cool. Then, spent some time at Triway as the head coach. After that, I was kind of like, I think I'm winding down my coaching career. I coached with Scott Garcia for a year at Glen Oak. Then Mike Cook, good buddy of mine, went to high school with. He and Antonio Hall joined his staff at Aquinas to try to help him out. We had a great season, probably one of the best in a long time there at St. Thomas. And then I hung the whistle up until last year. Like I said, Coach Renzi Parnell, who was the defensive coordinator at Hoban the entire time I was there, asked me for some help. And it was great. It was really fun. But it's exhausting. Hats off to these coaches and their families. The time they put in for the kids, I think, goes unnoticed sometimes. So really hats off to them, the commitment that they put in.
I was familiar with just about all of your stops. I forgot about the time you spent at Boardman. That just completely went under my radar.
I was a young buck back then, and DJ Ogilvie was the coach, and we had some studs, some absolute studs on those teams. 1 year, we were loaded. We started 5-0, and then injury bug hit and lost the next 5. Lost on the last play of the game. Tom McDaniels coached Jackson team through a Hail Mary. Lost on a fumbled 2-point conversion attempt against McKinley in a wild game up there in Boardman.
I remember that one.
Yeah, and then lost in a very close matchup. I think it was like 6-0 the first round of playoffs against Ignatius.
Boy, that's that. Oh, those were tough. But being at so many places and different cultures, coaching under different regimes, getting to know different kind of kids and their backgrounds and everything. I mean, that's had to have been a rewarding experience for you, right?
Oh, for sure. I got to coach with so many great coaches. Like I said, Tim Terrell, is really like an older brother to me up there at Hoban. We still stay in touch really well. DJ Ogilvie early in my career was great to learn from. He's at United Local now, does a great job there back where he started. Gare Mattis, when I was at East Palestine, was really good head coach. And then Scott Garcia was really fun to coach with. He's an intense guy. Up until he hung it up this year, I believe had the most wins, and he was the most seasoned federal league coach, had the most wins probably in the county is my guess. I could be wrong on that. Maybe Spider Miller had to give him a run for his money on total wins, but definitely some great people to work for.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm excited to have you on the show every Thursday, moving, not next Thursday, but starting the following Thursday. You'll be on with us breaking down the upcoming week's high school football games and looking at some of the conferences and some of the trends and some of the cool stuff that's going on. I know we're gonna have a ball this year. Looking forward to that. So if I just said, Drew, 2026 Stark County football, first couple of words, first sentence, first thought that comes to mind.
I'm excited. I think there's going to be some really good teams out there. I think when Stark County football is healthy, there is a lot of parity in our leagues, which there is, and Massillon and McKinley are at the top of their game. And I think that's the case. I think I said to you a couple weeks ago, and this may raise some eyebrows, and it's probably puts a lot of pressure on Coach Moore. I believe this is the most talented team in the history of Massillon football. I know that's a big statement, but I believe that to be true.
Yeah.
That brings pressure, deservingly so, right? I mean, if that's the team you're going to put together, you deserve the pressure that goes with it. I think Renzi Parnell, what he's doing at McKinley is absolutely phenomenal. I think they've got some holes to replace, specifically at quarterback, specifically on the offensive line. But if they can get those together, they're going to put together a really good season. What he's doing over there is kind of carrying on what Antonio Hall started, and putting his own spin on it. And then I'm excited. The EBC is going to be strong. It's going to be a lot of parity. I think the PAC, there's going to be a lot of parity. The Federal League as a whole is maybe a little bit younger than it has been in the past couple of years, but I think we're in store for some really good football.
Drew Sarachman is our guest here on the Sam Bourquin Show, 1310 WDPN, streaming all over, including the Q92 Radio YouTube channel, Facebook, X as well. I just had a thought that popped into my head. You were talking about McKinley Massillon. Mm-hmm. You're a good guy for me to ask this to. Would you say out of the 20 county teams, are McKinley and Massillon, what's the space between those two and the other 18 teams? Are they way ahead? Are they a little bit ahead?
I think on paper, when everyone's healthy right now, I think, they're ahead a considerable amount. I don't want to give bulletin board to any of those other coaches, but I think when you go through the schedules that they both do, there's opportunities for you to get beat. Right, the best teams aren't always the team that win. I think a lot of coaches will say out there that the most talented teams they've been a part of were not always the best teams and had the best records. So there's a lot that goes into it, including luck and health and how good your opponents are. So I would say, I know everyone likes to do their power rankings. Mm-hmm. Me personally, I think we're at the point again, maybe we haven't been in previous years, where you say, okay, Massillon and McKinley are here, and then let's rank everybody else. Now, do I think Dan DeGeorge at Lake is going to play McKinley very tough and has a chance to beat them? Absolutely, right? Mm-hmm. Very well coached, got a lot of talent coming back. There's any given Friday night, an upset can be had, right? So I would say on paper, from a talent perspective, I think Massillon and McKinley have separated themselves from the rest of the pack.
You also mentioned, EBC and PAC and things like that. Boy, these conferences, Drew, they're going to be looking a lot different in the next couple of years. Teams coming and going and leaving, starting new conferences, joining other conferences. It seems like there's a lot of it going on all over the state of Ohio, especially Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of stuff going on in Summit and Trumbull and some other areas. Do you think this is going to be the norm? Or is this just like a patch we're hitting right now and it might start to settle down?
I think about 10 years ago in the state of Ohio, there was a shift at the high school level. And schools found out, the more we prioritize football and the more money we spend on football, the better we will be.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the ability to transfer with ease. The ability that open enrollment has increased across the state and public school districts. So the ability to attract talent and not just farm it in your backyard, right? So if you look at the teams that have been very successful in football over a period of time, those are schools that prioritize sports and football in general. Who spends more money on football than anyone in Stark County? That's McKinley and Massillon, right? Who are the best two schools? McKinley and Massillon, right? Are they the biggest? McKinley's probably up there. Massillon isn't, right? You look at Archbishop Hoban. I mean, when I was there, a very large influx of money. They were getting tired of getting their heads knocked in by St. Vincent, St. Mary. They had lost 8 straight times to them. St. V's coming off 2 straight state championships. So Tim took over right at the peak of St. Vincent, St. Mary's dominance. And Hoban said, you know what, we're tired of it. We're going to start spending money. You look what transpired with Louisville. They were really good and really, beat on the NBC for a long time. I'm sure there's people who say a lot of things that went into that, but people get tired of losing, right? And they eventually were, however you want to say it, not included in the league anymore, or a new league was formed, right? And football is important at Louisville. They're spending money on football. So I think it's going to continue to happen. If those places that prioritize football and have the means to spend money on the sport are going to continue to be good, and we'll see them being placed in conferences that don't mind that.
That's an interesting take. I agree with a lot of it, if not all of it. Drew Sarachman is our guest on the Sam Bourquin Show, 1310 WDP. We want to shout out AWP Safety. If you are looking for a new path in life, maybe, somebody looking for a job, a new gig, a little different way of doing things, they're hiring right now. AWP Safety. You can check them out right now. Jobs at awpsafety.com. That's jobs at awpsafety.com. Great folks to work for. You mentioned Louisville. You've mentioned Lake. I think Lake's going to be pretty good this year. Yeah. Just look at who they have back, and I can't believe Coach DeGeorge has been there as long as he has since he's taken over for Jeff Durbin. Louisville, on the other hand, holy smokes, not their fault, but they're unlike their third coach in less than 15 months. But they've got some very talented kids. They've got some speed at the wideout. What do you see this year for the Leps and the Blue Streaks as we sit here today in early August?
Yeah, I think, starting with Louisville, obviously the schedule is difficult, right? You've got a lot of Federal League teams on there. You got Canfield on there. You start with New Philly. You got Dover on there. It's a meat grinder of a schedule. And I think that just listening to Coach Atkins, some of the interviews he's done, and knowing his brother, Tyler, and knowing the family for a while, you don't get more Louisville football than that family.
Right.
It's important to them, right? So I think the first thing is, I think people have to realize is things will always work out the way they're supposed to as far as coaching goes. I think the right person's in place at Louisville. Now, is there going to be a learning curve? Absolutely. I was a first-year head coach before, and I'll tell you this, I thought I was a lot better coach before I got hired and after I was done being a head coach. And, we had some success, but it's not an easy job. There's when you're a head coach, you don't just coach football anymore, right? You're the CEO of the program. There's a lot of things on your plate. But I think where he's lucky is the strength of this Louisville football team is in the trenches and in the middle of the field, right? At running back, at middle linebacker, they've got some studs. On the line of scrimmage, the Norris and Burek kids are two absolute studs. They're Division I caliber college football players. And when you're playing a bunch of Division III and Division II schools, those guys show up on Friday night on the film on both sides of the ball. So I'm excited about Louisville. They're up in Division II again, where they made some of their playoff runs. But the thing about those old Louisville teams that were so successful was the efficiency on offense and the speed that they had at the skill positions.
Yep.
I think they've had some speed at specific positions, but not the overall team speed. However, I will say I don't remember Louisville teams having this up front. So I think that they have an opportunity to be really successful, and I think they're going to beat New Philly week 1, and that's going to set them up good for the rest of the year.
Couple other teams I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit. Glen Oak, because they do have a new coach after Scott Garcia decided to step down, and you hear the name Dennison, something good's got to be happening.
Mm-hmm.
But Glen Oak's football program, where does it sit right now? Where's it going?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough to replace Scott Garcia. It was tough to replace him the first time. I think Plain Township, there's plenty of talent, right? So it's them finding a way to keep their talent, number one. It's them finding a way to develop the youth programs that feed into that to the high school level. And I think it's going to be a tall task this year. I think he's going to implement. Coach Dennison is a good coach, great history. He's got a really good offense. I had the opportunity we played them at Hoban 2 years in a row in the playoffs. Really well-run operation. That's what you're going to get. But yeah, I think it's going to be an uphill battle for him this year a little bit. They lost some people to graduation. They lost some kids to transfer. But no one's going to feel bad for you. It's Division I. It's the Federal League. You got to strap it up and go and play each week. But they're definitely going to have some growing pains at Glen Oak as the season gets rolling along.
Drew Sarachman is our guest, Q92 Sports, joining us here on the Sam Bourquin Show, 1310 WDP, a little high school football chat today on this Thursday. Got to ask you about Alliance, as we are located here just a stone's throw from the high school. Aviators had a magical year last year. Talent was just overflowing. They were hit pretty good by graduation.
Yeah.
But because they had a couple games, they blew people out. They had some kids that could come in and play under the bright lights on Friday. And I think Coach Goodman thinks he's got a pretty special team coming back. Where do you see the Aviators this year?
Yeah, it's you're never going to know talking to Coach Goodman, right? Because he's the same regardless. If they're struggling, if he feels like they're talented, he's the same guy. He's got the smile on his face always. But they're a well-coached team. They definitely got hit hard by graduation, right? Losing J.R. Jackson, who's just a dynamic athlete, losing some of the guys they lost on the line of scrimmage. Names escape me now, but they had a really good tight end linebacker that they lost. The Jaron kid was really talented. But Alliance always has athletes. They in the recent couple of years, they've always had size up front. What's going to be tough for them is the front end of their schedule is loaded pretty heavy. You start the year, Northwest, Worcester, and Streetsboro, some really solid teams before they get into league play. And I think the EBC is pretty even this year, with the exception, I think maybe West Branch is going to lead the way there. But they don't have much time to get their sea legs. So they're going to have to come ready to play week 1. And they always play a physical brand of football. And, I think that is going to be a phenomenal game over in Canal Fulton of Alliance and Northwest.
One more before we let you go, Drew. I got to ask you about the parochial schools, Canton Central Catholic, St. Thomas Aquinas. You're familiar with both, obviously. Yep. Central's got, I think, 17 or 18 lettermen back. They had a rough year last year. They looked to rebound. And St. Thomas, again, new coach, trying to breathe a little something into the program. What do we see for the Knights and the Crusaders?
Yeah, so I think Isaiah Robinson, who's actually on staff at Alliance last year, and Isaiah was part of the staff with Mike Cook and Antonio Hall and myself at St. Thomas when I was there. He knows what it takes to win. When he played at McKinley, they were very successful. He's as a coaching staff, he's part of some very successful teams, and he's got a hard work mentality. He knows nothing's given to him, and it's going to be difficult. The main thing for both St. Thomas and Central is to keep people healthy, right? They don't have the depth they've had in years past. I think we could say for Central Catholic, year in and year out, they're about as well coached as you can be. Trucker, Coach Lennon Smith, his son, and the rest of that staff just do a really great job. It's like an fine oiled machine. You go watch them practice. It's the exact same year after year after year, and that's why they're usually very competitive. Obviously, their schedule's very difficult year in year out, especially to start with Perry. But I think Central's going to have a better year than they had last year. But really, for both of those teams, they just have to find a way to stay healthy.
No doubt. Biggest key for almost everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Drew Sarachman, our guest. Drew, thanks for coming on today. I wanted to kind of introduce you to some that did not know you and all the cool stuff that you bring with you as far as your high school football knowledge. And I'm looking forward to visiting with you every Thursday during the high school football season. We're going to have a lot of fun. Fans are going to get informed, entertained, and we'll have some fun along the way. So I appreciate you coming on, and we will talk very, very soon, okay?
All right. Thanks, Sammy. Have a good one.
There he goes. Drew Sarachman joining us here on the Sam Bourquin Show, 1310 WDP.